right, welcome back to the second half Cannabiz Conversations with Kim Stuck. As I've mentioned, I'm sure everyone's tired of it by now, but today's sponsor, 710 Potency, Potency 710. I've been saying it so many times today. Manny Lyle's gone above and beyond. Lux Travel Pack up for grabs. Head over to the Cannabiz Convo's Instagram page for more details. But I'm telling you what, people, that package is something you definitely want to take advantage of. Kim, here in the second half, you told us we're going to be jumping in to the GMP certification. I know nothing. Start me at the ground level. First, tell us what the acronym means, and then tell us what's happening now versus what could potentially be happening with future changes to regulation.
Yeah, so GMP means good manufacturing practices. There's also an equivalent, GACP, good agricultural and collection practices in like a cultivation. So you can get these certifications in the cultivation facility or in your manufacturing facility. They're essentially certifications to like an FDA standard. So even if you are regulated by the FDA, having these certifications, like let's say you're, a brownie company that doesn't have any cannabis in it at all. It's just regular brownies. You can get this certification and it essentially makes your company look really above and beyond, right? Instead of just regulated by the FDA, we also have this certification from this accredited third-party company that comes in every year and makes sure that we're making, our company is following all the quality assurance stuff we're supposed to. And, we have all the SOPs and all of that stuff, right? So for like manufacturing, like regular manufacturing, this is prevalent. You need it to sell on Amazon. You need it to sell overseas. You need it to sell in King Soopers and Walmart and all of the big box stores and online in most cases. So it's required essentially in the manufacturing industry already. Most people won't, if you don't have it, they won't buy your sugar or your flour or whatever it is that you're selling. So it's, like I said, the industry kind of made it a requirement. And that is also what we're seeing in the cannabis industry. It's starting to do that. In New York, in Florida, and in some parts of Michigan, in Maryland, GMP certification is required before you can even get a cannabis license or a hemp license. So this trend is already happening, and it's only spreading because those GMP facilities don't want to work with or buy anything from any company that isn't GMP certified, right? So it's kind of got that momentum. If you are GMP certified and the FDA comes in to do an audit, you are going to pass that audit. It is a little above and beyond, not insanely, but it follows those same regulations. So it really prepares your company for federal legalization and just the longevity of the company as a whole. Companies who have GMP certification keep employees longer and have lower cost when it comes to manufacturing and that kind of thing. So there's like a lot to it that has made my clients and other clients in other industries really like successful. So it's a certification that you can get from a third party. We work with 6 accredited third party companies that do the actual certification. You cannot be a certifier and a consultant. There's an ethical dilemma in that. That's why there is no lay consulting certification, which everyone asks me if we have one, and I'm like, we don't. Because that would be weird and not ethical. So
it's same thing. Yeah. Same thing in my industry. People are like, so you take, kickbacks from all these other companies. I'm like, guys, no. I can't be the middleman and be unbiased if I take people's money. So no, we can't be in both positions. That only seems fair, right? That you can't be the one that says, who's looking you over then, right? Who's making sure that what you're saying is correct? You can't be the judge, jury, executioner on every topic. I think that seems fair for everyone. The practice itself, as far as getting there, does this get amped up, in your opinion, with a deschedule, reschedule, as we talked in part 1? Is that what you can come to expect from this? Is that then it will be that way? And do you expect cannabis businesses to treat each other as you just mentioned, which was, I don't see your GMP on here, so I'm not interested in your goods? Is that the lane you think that we're headed down?
Yeah, I mean, I'm already seeing it. So we have been doing this since 2017. Actually, GMP wasn't even available to cannabis until the late 2018, actually. So we've been gearing people up. And then once it was available and we started working with an accredited certifier, then a few more came online and a few more came online. And that's exactly what our clients are doing. It's like, hey, we want to be GMP because our price, we can increase the price of our product. People will trust our brand more, or our ingredient, like if they're making isolate or something like that to be put into something else. They're like, hey, we only work with other people that have GMP certification. So this is already becoming a trend. And it's not a trend. It's kind of the way that the world works, right? In other industries. So yeah, it's a process. It takes, we can do it in 4 months. We can do it in 8 months. We can do it in 2 years. It just depends on how quickly you want to get it done and what your budget is like, right? We can do a 5-hour a month contract, or we can do a 40-hour a month contract. It really just depends on the client. But like you said before, any small step in that direction makes you look really good. So even if you're just doing a little bit every month, and we're kind of one of those companies that if somebody comes in, they can be like, hey, we're not 100% compliant yet, but we're working towards it. Here's the card of our consultant. Talk to our consultant. And it makes you look really good because you're doing something, right?
Yeah, I think having you on the staff is a step, right? I think that's what we talk about in general with ourselves and people in our space is, hey, if you have us, when someone does come knocking, at least you're not by yourself, It's
Right.
why I have a really badass accountant and I've had her for a decade and she's talking about retiring and it freaks me the fuck out because at the end of the day, when the IRS knocks on my door, I just point them to her door and I'm done with it. And it puts me at ease running a business the size that we run. I don't want to deal with any of whatever they have to talk about. You want to talk about regulations, Kim? No, thank you. Okay. When it comes to those fine folks, and I have 280E and I can do whatever the hell I want. And it's still a massive pain in my ass all the way around. So I totally get that. Now, there was a word or an acronym that you dropped early on, the SOP. I laugh about it because in the car business, we don't have those. We should totally have all that. We don't at all. And that's where my compliancy buddies always tell me, Sean, have a standard operating procedure for, someone having a conversation that was inappropriate or having this, like just have it documented. That's all they want to see is just a documentation. How often do you, in your industry, do you find the lack of SOPs or, what is the state of SOPs in cannabis right now as you see it, Kim?
Well, there's a set number of SOPs that you have to have for your state regulations, right? And we do find that most people have some sort of SOPs in place for that. But most of the time when we go in for like a gap analysis, which is just an audit to GMP, people have like zero. it's really rare.
So we're hitting the bare minimum is what I'm hearing from you, Kim. You walk in, the state says you have to have 4, you have 4 binders, you move on. But Kim, where does the biggest issue? Again, people want to think they're doing it to be regulated, but talk to me about the value of an SOP from someone in your position of why it isn't just paperwork. It isn't just headache. Here's why it helps.
Well, when I was a regulator, I did a whole lot of recalls. And if they didn't have a standard operating procedure in place, proving that they're following a certain steps through their process, and keeping track of that process and what batches this process went through, then the recall would be much more wide than what it normally would be. Like if you couldn't prove to me, right,
that it came from batch 4 and batch 7 or whatever that I've been doing my job, then you'd have to take out all the batches in an assumption that everything was bad. My goodness.
Yeah. We call that an any and all recall. And it means anything and all things that you have made in the life of your company gets recalled because you couldn't.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
That cannot be good. Kim, were you in the Colorado scene? I mean, you've obviously been on the your own side since 2017. So I don't know how much you would have run up against it previous, but the pesticides, the molds discussion when it comes to cannabis, Are you hearing those? And did you hear those before as it relates to this? Because obviously SOPs are a big deal about how that's mitigated, when it's mitigated, what it's taken care of. Does that factor into your world?
Yeah. So they used to call me the weed whacker in Denver because I did almost every single recall and pesticide investigation and mold investigation in Denver from 2014 through mid 2017. So yes, that all of the things that you're talking about are the things that I know that can happen.
Yeah.
And why I'm so like, hey guys, you have to have it this way. And I can give you exact reasons why. Because if you can't prove that you're doing a certain thing the same way every time, if you're not, can't prove that the testing that you did at this point was, different than the testing at this point, or whatever it may be, they will assume that all of the facility is contaminated and they'll just destroy everything. And it will literally devastate your business. Like, businesses do not come back from that. It is incredibly rare. And this happens in wholesale food too, right? This is why in wholesale food, they are so strict about it, because this is not the only industry that has these kinds of issues, right? Like, cannabis is
tobacco, alcohol. I mean, anyone who can make something out of something else, right? Biologically speaking, has a chance to spoil, get shitty, be moldy. So let's go circle back real fast to the weed whacker piece here, Kim. So you're coming in just cutting down grows. Is that how we get this name? And is that something you have to do? Is that something is it that sort of impersonal, if you will, where you're the one who's like, your weed's jacked up and I'm here to cut it all down? Or do you just make the ruling and someone else cuts it down?
No. So it depends on how big the disposal would be. So if it was 200 bottles of gummies, like, I would go in myself and do bleach and, all of that, and make sure it was thrown away and mixed with the substrate and that kind of thing.
Okay.
There were times where it was an entire grow, 2,000 plus plants that needed to be cut down. And then we would hire a company that actually would come with a wood chipper and cut everything down. And I'd be there from sun up to sundown, making sure that it was all getting done.
And Kim, because you didn't have SOPs, or because the whole thing was rotted? Is it both?
Usually for that, those particular ones, it was usually pesticide contamination. So they were spraying something that they shouldn't have been or weren't allowed to, usually myclobutanol or imidacloprid, very carcinogenic pesticides. And a lot of times it wasn't even the owner's fault. It was some grower coming in the middle of the night and spraying stuff. I mean, it was I have seen things that were just insane, right? And many times people thought that they were doing what they were supposed to be doing, but their documentation wasn't the way it should have been, or, was missing parts, which looks really sketchy, or, whatever. And because of that, we would have to dispose of a whole lot more than if they would have had GMP or GACP in place. If they had all the documentation the way that they were supposed to, it could have prevented that. Maybe they would have had to throw away a smaller amount. It's still a recall. It's not fun, but every company goes through a recall at some point. It's the way that you deal with it that is important, because no matter what, you're going to get.
But before that, Kim, that's important too, right? It's about being more prepared. It's going to cost you a lot less to be prepared than it is to have your whole grow go away. There's just no question, right? And so I think people get a little bit, in my opinion, I think people get a little bit penny pinching when it's not time to do that, right? I always joke, you're stepping over dollars to pick up dimes. I don't really get that in the moment. People see things and that's what they're into. But for you and your perspective, how often is it that people, like you said, I mean, I think you said it in the part one, people are rarely prepared as they should be, though, when you come into these businesses. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I would say 75% of the companies we go into are really confident that they're going to do great, and they don't. Some of them, I mean, we do have a small percentage of no, they're ready, we're good, go for it. But most of the time we can give them a pretty good list. That's part of what we do, is tell them, hey, these are the things you need. And our report acts as a checklist for them for hey, this is what you have to do with this. You have to put a hand sink here. you need this, and this SOP written. And then they have to be to that like GMP standard too, which is also, a lot of people have SOPs, and they're great for like work orders or like, telling people how to do things or a recipe, but they don't have all the things that are required for GMP, So, and it's a hard thing to do. Like, this isn't easy. This isn't something that you can just like Google and like figure out. Like, for the most part, it's really in depth. The regulations are confusing and don't make sense to most people. And so that's why we're here, is to kind of get through all of the BS, write things the way that they're supposed to be, and then teach the staff how to understand it so that they can like move forward and keep this system in place for a long time. We want them to last for a very long time. So,
ladies and gentlemen, as I said in part 1, Kim is on our side, okay? All of this preparation is to be ready for regulators, people that she knows the job well. She understands the position. That's why I'm so glad to have had her on the show this year, because it's something for me that I don't really, like I said, I'm not a regulation guy. I'm not. I don't have a problem, following rules. It's not what I said. I don't like to be told what to do. I'm bad at that. I get it. However, running a business, as I mentioned, my accountant, she tells me a lot of things I don't want to hear, but I got to do them so that I avoid problems down the road, et cetera. And by listening to those people, Kim, let's you've been very generous with your time. I'll try and wrap it up here as we sort of head down this road. There's 2 things that I want to ask everyone closing out this season. First for you will be the reschedule, deschedule. We've touched on it. Mm-hmm. What does Kim prefer? What does Kim think is the best way forward to normalization? Come on, Starlink. Kim, are you back?
Yes.
All right.
Deschedule. Yeah, okay. Deschedule would be great. That doesn't mean that it wouldn't be regulated. It just means that it wouldn't be in the scheduling system.
All right, so descheduling doesn't mean unregulated. It just means not under the schedule process, which would benefit whom? And does this, in your opinion, help us get everyone out of prison dealing with cannabis? That's what I'm most interested in making sure happens. What does descheduling do that for me? Does either do that for me, Kim?
Yeah, I think, I think Schedule 3 pushes it a little farther, right? So more people would be released. Also, it is still up to states at that point, right? But with descheduling completely, it's a lot more likely that a lot more people will be released, right? With descheduling, it would be treated, the same way that like fish oil would be treated, right? Like things like that. Like it would be much more under the supplement world than it would, like a pharmaceutical or something like that. So definitely descheduling if we can. And like I said, even if it gets descheduled, I mean, the FDA and OSHA will then be regulating it. So we still have to be prepared. We still have to have, GMP. We still have to have, all the different OSHA stuff in place, or else we're not going to be prepared and we're going to get in trouble and not going to have our licenses or whatever. But it still puts us out of that, hey, we have to be pharmaceutical grade. We have to be sold out of a dispensary/pharmacy. We have to, all of those things kind of go away.
Well, yeah, I mean, I live in a prohibition state. So I live in the state of Wisconsin, who is not up to date with anything. And one of their last ditch efforts recently was to have 5 state-run dispensaries. And this is what they put forward. And even in their own party, people came out and said, we do not want to be the DMV of weed. None of us want to be involved like that. States don't actually want to do that. But I think when you're trying to do the bare minimum, as this state does frequently, it makes everything else more of a pain in the ass. Do that. And so government oversight, you get why people are frustrated by it. You like you said in part 1, look, I had to go in places and tell people their baby was ugly and it's gonna, it can't be fixed. I'm sorry. This is it. People don't like to hear that, but at the end of the day, do we want it to be normalized or don't we? And unfortunately, in order to get there, we're going to have to give something. I know that we all want it to be this Wild West culture, but that's not how mainstream works.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we can't do that where it's just free for all and anybody can make anything and sell anything. It is in the United States, consumable market, right? So all of it has to be regulated and all of that, but the states will still get to decide. So it'll be kind of the way that liquor is, where each state has different liquor laws. I don't think that they're going to just say, hey, it's legal for everyone. If there is a state that doesn't want to have it, they're probably not going to have it still. So unfortunately, that's the case, where the other states, will run their own world, but the FDA and OSHA will just be like stacked on top of that world, just the same as every other industry. So, yeah, I mean, I would love for Biden to throw a Hail Mary in October and, deschedule completely. That would be amazing. But we just don't know what's going to happen. It sounds like at least we'll get Schedule 3. It's a step in the right direction, but it's not quite where I wish it would be.
Yeah, no, and I think most people feel like, the Schedule 3 is just sort of a weaker version of what it really should be. I'm someone who says progress is progress. I know that that's not a popular opinion, but like you, my fight and my goal is to normalize it, right? We say on this show, the goal of this show is to remove the stigma, uplift the plant. And that's always going to be the goal for me. It's been that way since I was a kid. I've been an advocate for people using cannabis for anything I've ever come across. I don't care if it's a nephew who has seizures, a little girl who has cancer. It doesn't matter. It's always been my answer to anything, as I think it is for many. Our last question, Kim, I know you talked about you still do consume. So what is Kim's favorite way of consumption? Of course, right? We asked Kim the last question of the day. And Elon's internet lets her down.
Okay, I'm back.
You're back and you're always smiling. You've got it down to a T. It's so awesome. See, but this is what I love about my show. I don't edit things. Like, we're just here having fun. This is life. Shit happens. So before you froze up, you put a huge smile on your face, and I asked you your favorite way to consume.
Yeah, joints. Hands down, flower. Yeah.
Period. Are you a roller yourself, or do you buy pre-rolls?
No, I roll them myself. But I do have a couple brands that if I'm going to buy pre-rolls, Alibi Cannabis out here in Oregon, some of the best pre-rolls.
Oh, come on. Internet. There it is. Some of the best pre-rolls in Oregon.
Yeah. Alibi Cannabis. They're awesome.
I love it. I love it. One more time with the name.
Alibi
Cannabis.
Yeah, they're an amazing Oregon company that's right down the road from me, actually, up by where I live. So
also a client, Kim, or no? Just something you got.
So they're not a client right now, but they're good friends of ours, right? So they've been in the scene for a really long time, and if I've been to their grow many a times.
And if they ever need you, they know where to find you, right?
Exactly. Yes.
And speaking of where to find you, Kim, where can people find you after this incredible discussion? I guarantee you at least one person listening is going to have a light bulb aha moment. Where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can go to our website at www.consulting.com, or you can reach out to me directly. My email is kim.stuck, STUCK, @alayconsulting.com.
You can also find Kim on LinkedIn. I've come across her a few times on there as well. Kim, thank you so much for being on the show today. This was absolutely incredible. We also need to thank our sponsor, Potency 710. Don't forget, Mandy Lyle and the group over there giving away 20% off your first order. Head over to potency710.com, podcast 710 at checkout. Tell them Sean sent you, because I got to tell you, I love the product. I use it on my own. Kim, thank you so much for being wonderful. We ran into some technical difficulties, but you're a champ. We worked through them. You did great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Everyone, thank you for joining us. Joining us next week on the show will be, well, we're going to keep it a special guest. I'm not going to give away any hints right now. I want to keep everyone on their toes. Don't forget, the goal of this show, as it should be the goal of yours, remove the stigma, uplift the plant. Thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your week.